A local mother of 3, dead. She's from Grosse Pointe. It's been 15 years, and there still are so many questions about exactly what happened to JoAnn Matouk Romain. There are questions of what happened after she walked out of a church. There's some missing keys, a questionable police timeline. Did the Coast Guard really arrive at the scene at the time they said? And her body was found 70 days later from drowning, but a dry drowning. There was no water in the lungs. There are questions. Oh, and there's a dead witness. The story is not over. Right now, I'm sitting down with the daughters of JoAnn Matouk Romain. January 2025.
January 2025.
So it's 15 years.
Yeah, 15. Crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that there'd be, I mean, we say this every year.
Right.
We always think there'd be a little bit more progress, but the case is officially closed. So I guess the question is, you know, we've said this before, you're never giving up.
I mean, absolutely not, never giving up. And I think every year we come across somebody else that wants to take a deep dive into the case, whether it's an expert or a licensed attorney, you know, that's been in cases that have been, very, very deep. Mm-hmm. And I think this past year we did have an attorney that was a high-profile attorney for the AG's office for some time. He was prosecuting attorney. He took a look at it. And just like any high-profile attorney that's looked at this case, they look at it, they review it, they say that this is, the most messed up case I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, that they've prosecuted cases with less evidence. And those people have been tried and they're in prison. Mm-hmm. So the question is, why has this case not been prosecuted? If we have more evidence than other cases that have been tried and prosecuted, why are we sitting here 15 years later and nobody's tried this case?
Mm-hmm. Kelly, this case has been covered. Obviously, we've covered it for 15 years. Netflix did a special. Now there's a podcast. It seems like everyone has interest in your mother.
Everybody but the authorities that are supposed to be helping us.
Right.
And we've had a lot of following with the new podcast this year, and everyone's still interested in hearing the story and wondering why we're still working on this 15 years later.
Yeah. Take me back to the day that your mom went missing. Or I should say, she was reported missing,
right,
but not by you.
Right.
So it was January 12th.
January 12th, she went to church. She stopped to get gas before she went to church. There's video of her going to get the gas. She got full service because it was cold outside. Mm-hmm. Went to church, came out of the church. There's a witness that saw her leaving the church. There's a witness that saw the Lexus SUV panic alarm going off with the flashers. There's another witness that said the car they were the last person to leave the church, said the car had left the parking lot. There was no cars. So to us, the panic alarm went off, car left the parking lot, then at some point came back to the parking lot, parked in a different position than it was originally. In that time frame, we had police officers at our house at 9:24 p.m., I'll never forget the time, asking us if our mom was missing because they found her car abandoned in the church parking lot. The problem with that is the car was registered to me. They could have never known she was driving that car.
So the fact they show up at your door asking where your mother is,
right,
is odd.
Extremely. Okay. We never reported her missing. She wasn't missing to us. Why are you concerned about a vehicle parked in a church?
I think a very important piece of this too is we watched the officers open the car to check her purse that was sitting on the front seat. So it was not like they went in her purse to get her license and see. We watched them go in there. So they were already at our house.
Right. It doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all. And the arrival time, when you take a look at when the police showed up and when the Coast Guard showed up, you get to that scene and it's an active police scene.
Active police scene. Coast Guard's on site, police taped off. The Coast Guard was called on our timeline. And that's very important to understand. So it's actually what they consider, it was automated, right? Mm-hmm. And it's typed out and it comes from the aircraft that time. So they were actually contacted exactly the same time that the police showed up at our house, which was 9:24. They were on scene shortly after that. So it makes you wonder, how is all this going on? But she was never reported missing.
It's very odd that someone just knocks on the door and asks, is your mother missing? And simultaneously, the Coast Guard is called and they show up and
the
just,
police.
You know, we don't get a police response like that within 2 hours of someone not being reported missing.
Not to mention the police are saying that they didn't do that at that time. They did it an hour later, which is a lie.
Right. So her body is found 70 days later. And when you hired a private detective and they take a look at the clothing and the shoes and the water currents, what do they tell you?
They're telling us there's absolutely no way that she went in where the police are alleging she had entered. It was a foot of water. It was frigid cold. There was no current, no wind, no wave, nothing. There's no way.
How did her body wind up where it was?
She was dumped very close to where she was found. Every expert will tell you that.
She had no water in her lungs.
She had no water in her lungs. She was dead before she hit the water. She wasn't breathing.
And all of this comes from that moment 2 weeks before where you thought, my mom's worried about something.
She's very concerned about something she uncovered, but wouldn't tell us what it was at the time.
But she said, I'm worried, and she actually wanted to go to the church to pray.
Yes. She said, I asked her what's wrong. She said she didn't want to talk about it. She was worried, and she just wanted to go pray.
At that time, did you take it very seriously? What do you think, Kelly? Because was your mom one of those people who were like, okay, mom's being dramatic? Or
She was always overly cautious for everything, but we could tell the difference. There was something going on and something bigger. And, you know, she had been telling us leading up to this time that, you know, someone was following her and all these little, like her mail was being messed with and all these little things. And so we knew it was serious because, again, we could tell the difference with
too many things were making sense leading up to her disappearance.
Yeah. And then for her not to tell us something was a big flag because she told us most things. So for her to be so worried to not mention what was going on was an even bigger problem.
She was trying to protect you.
Yes.
You believe that?
100%. She didn't tell us what she knew because she wanted to protect us.
Yeah.
So now, 15 years later.
But the reality is we found out anyway.
Yeah.
What do people say in Grosse Pointe? Because I know that it seems like whenever I go there and talk about your story, your mom, everyone's like, oh yeah, I keep following that. What's the latest? It's an intriguing case. What is it like living in the community where you believe, you know, someone killed your mom?
Yeah. Well, you get a lot of daily, like, you know, looks. Everyone's still looking at us. Same commentary. What's going on? Why isn't it? You know, how are you guys? Why is any progress? And we just have to sit there and repeat the same things over and over again. And we're always just like, you know, write letters for us. And, you know, the biggest question we get is, what can we do to help? Right. And we're always like, write a letter, call our Congress people, put it out there and ask for help, or what are they doing for us?
Why do you think it's not getting the attention that you think it deserves?
Well, we've figured out there's a lot of corruption along the way. I mean, we can keep it as alive as we possibly can, and this is what we're going to do, but the roadblocks have been the same since the beginning for us. So we just have to keep going and try and knock them down.
Right. So. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I just think, you know, overall, it's just a continuous pushback from authorities that should be doing an investigation, right? And I think overall, we know what happened. And I think that's the hardest part. We know what happened. I think we've solved this case. It's a matter of it getting prosecuted and who's going to take the torch and actually do it. And I think that that's where we're at this point. You know, we have a witness that identified the number one suspect that my mom said, if something happens to me, please, you know, investigate him. That we have a witness that, you know, identified him, sketched his face. That witness is now dead. And we sit here and we look at each other like, how could all of this happen? And still, there's no prosecution. You know, the case is simple. Follow exactly what she said. Follow what the witnesses saw. And it's that, you know, I think truly it is that simple. It's just the fact that nobody is willing to take the case because there is some political blocks and there is a cover-up, point blank.
I've tried to get some people to talk.
Yeah.
A lot of people cancel. And a lot of people still fear for their life if they speak up.
Right.
Yep.
Podcast came. You got a lot of attention on the podcast.
I did.
Were you surprised? Who came forward? What has come out of it, Kelly?
Of course, obviously, they also don't want to be identified.
Right.
It's always, I have this to tell you, but please keep me anonymous, which is fair. Okay.
So you're taking this information these tipsters are giving, you're giving it to either authorities or your attorney,
Yeah.
and then it just...
And the attorney is trying to meet with authorities that he thinks will help.
Yeah.
And now he's sitting on, a different avenue that he's taken with a formal request with the AG's office. And he also put one in with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and he's waiting to see. He goes, there's too much evidence to turn this away. There's no possibility, So it's just seeing what they're going to do next.
Okay. What do you think's going to happen? Really?
I think something's got to happen. I think it's impossible to have this much evidence. Mm-hmm. There's so many other things that have been uncovered of, other illegal activities going on that need to be investigated.
It's been 15 years. Do you still remember that interaction with your mom?
I do. Even though it's been 15 years, as soon as this date comes around, the anniversary, it just takes you right back to that time, right? Like the weeks before, the day she disappeared, and you just continuously reflect on it. And it's not that every day we don't think about it, because we do, but it's just this time frame that kind of just puts you back in that shock.
I share the story, obviously, to so many people, and it hit a couple things that really still continue to baffle you and stand out. I mean, obviously, the police response, the Coast Guard time arrival, the missing keys. What are some of the things in this case that just still, like when you share the story,
I think the timeline and them knowing my mom was driving that car when the car belonged to me. Mm-hmm. Those are things that you can't explain, other than they knew something was going to happen to her before it did.
Right.
There's no other explanation for it, right? And those are things that we sit here and we talk about all the time. Like, how could they have ever known she was driving that car? It was registered to me,
Like you said, police respond to a missing person before she was ever reported missing.
Never reported missing. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Who does that?
Nobody ever a police department doesn't report a person missing. Right. A family does.
And you did not report her missing?
I did not report her missing. And remember, she had only been at church for 2 hours. How does that happen?
Mm-hmm. And you have a dead witness.
And I think that that's the most alarming and troublesome.
Yeah.
A witness who had told us he was being harassed by the police. He has pictures, he has videos, he told his family, he told his friends. And he was a healthy guy, 55 years old. He, was an athlete and, previously when he was younger, played at the U of M for football for some time, and big guy, healthy guy, and he's mysteriously dead. No answers for it.
I talked to his family, and they're really worried.
Yeah.
They don't believe he died naturally.
No.
But at the same time, as in every case, everyone's a little scared to push and to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, because they know that it's not good. Whatever happened to him probably was sinister, and they're afraid, just like everybody else is, right? But it's really hard for us to know that he went through so much torture with the police, with them making him look like he didn't know what he was talking about. Right. He didn't know what he saw.
So as we wrap up, I guess I always say, do we think we're going to be here next year?
I mean, hopefully next year we're celebrating something. That's all we can hope for at this point.
And at the end of the day, it's not even a celebration.
You're correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just getting some answers.
Yeah.
What are you hoping for next with this new attorney?
Yeah, I'm hoping that, you're always looking for a fresh set of eyes, always wondering, has everyone that looked at this case not know what they're talking about? Everyone says it's the most messed up case they've ever seen, right? Mm-hmm. So you go through all these experts, you go through all these attorneys, and every person that touches it says the same thing. This is the most messed up case we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. How has this not been prosecuted? So my hope is that he knows, he has that magic touch, that he can make that call and and get in front of the right person, and somebody's actually going to take this seriously and have the guts to try the case. I mean, bottom line is there's enough evidence to try it.